Yes, okay.
Sorry. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to one more round of series of seminars by the BSE Brokers Forum. We have been continuously doing many such seminars for our member brokers, market participants, trading fraternity, students and various other channel partners. What we thought this time is, after running a successful series of regulatory, Know Your Regulator, what we launched just last month, we thought that that type of series we'll be doing at much more higher level, where this type of participation between the members and the regulator is more often. So just for your information, before we start this program, we are going to launch that series in the forthcoming month in Kolkata, later in Delhi and Ahmedabad for our member brokers also. Okay, thanks. Hello. Talking about this seminar, we thought cyber security is one of the most active threat which is happening right now. We thought, why don't we touch this type of topic and give our member brokers a chance to know what exactly is happening in the market today in terms of cybercrime, issues with regards to SMSs which sometimes we receive from us, that you can buy this shares or you can sell these things, and a lot of things are happening. I'm sure you have many more questions. In fact, I would like to thank one of our BPF governing board member, Mr. Sunil Sharda, who has helped us in order to get this topic being shared by the organization Palladion over here, who I would like to introduce. We have Mr. Rohit Kumar, the co-founder and the executive vice president of Palladion On Demand, who is going to be the key speaker for today's event. Rajat Mohanty, who is the chairman, he's traveling to US, so he's not with us. In fact, Rajat has written an article in a forthcoming edition of January on cybercrime. We have Nimit over here, who has constantly supported us to have this seminar today. And I would say this is the last seminar of the year to end with the forum series of seminar. So on that note, I would request Mr. Harin Mehta, who is the forum governing board member, to formally welcome Rohit and Nimit over here, please. Come please. Rohit, you can come. Yeah. Rajan, okay. And one bouquet to Nimit. Thank you very much, Harina. Thank you. Please. So on that note, let me give the floor to Rohit Kumar, who will be taking you to the presentation. Our sequence would be, we start the presentation at around 5:30 odd, we'll open for Q&A, and around 6 o'clock we hopefully end the presentation. So I give the floor to Rohit, please. Rajan, ये off करा दीजिए, इनके पास है.
Hello. Hello. I'm audible? Okay. All right. Many thanks, Yospi, and good evening, everyone. Many thanks for your time. And hopefully, as Vispi said, this is the last seminar for the year, and hopefully you'll go back with some valuable contribution in terms of how cybersecurity is relevant and what can be done to ensure greater cybersecurity preparedness at your respective organizations. So as we move along, let us first try to understand why is it that cybersecurity is important for the brokers. So all of you would have read or heard about many high-profile cyber attacks on prominent firms. So you would have heard about the Target, Home Depot, JP Morgan, Sony, which led to the compromise of so many millions of confidential information of the customers or the clients. What these attacks showed was the kind of tremendous damage and the severity of the impact that could be caused by cyber attacks on these organizations through a diversity of techniques. It could be malware, it could be fraudulent mails, it could be attacks on web applications, insecure websites, also from a diverse attacker base, which could be your hackers, which could be your crime syndicates, which could be your activists who are looking at their own propaganda or their own ideology. But in the midst of all this, and possibly because the focus was on the massive attacks and on the very prominent firms, some of the largest firms, what got missed or what got obscured was one fact, that every organization, doesn't matter whether large or small, has valuable data, and so every organization is potentially susceptible to a cyber attack. And that is the case for the brokerage firms or the brokers community also. Especially so because being in the financial services sector, brokerage firms and brokers deal with sensitive financial information, as well as you are very core to the economic backbone of any country, both at a national level as well as at an international level. So of course, there is, for the cyber attackers, the brokers and the brokerage community becomes a very attractive target. So let us look at some of the attacks in the recent times on the brokers across the world. And this is the data that is primarily there essentially from the US. So Scottrade is an online brokerage firm, and last month it disclosed that hackers had accessed 4.6 million clients' personal data information. This is also something which they came to know from FBI. It was not known from their internal sources, and they suspect that these data was stolen over a period from the last few months of 2014 to the till about January to February 2015. So it happened over quite an extended period of time. Benjamin F. Edwards and Company, they disclosed that they were subject to a cryptoware kind of attack, which is an extension of cryptowire. What happens over there is that the attackers encrypt your data, encrypt your files, and send it to a suspicious unknown location, and then they demand ransom from you if you need access to your data. So Benjamin F. Edwards was subject to that data. That was around June 2014. There was a Russian national living in New York who was recently, in last year around May 2014, he was sentenced to 30 months in prison for hacking into several accounts at the brokerage firms and doing unauthorized trades. Charles Schwab, another prominent broker in the US, their online trades were suspended for almost 2 hours because of the attacks on their online systems. And in a recent study in the US by the Securities Exchange Commission, what they found is that it was a survey conducted around on about 50 to 60 brokerage firms. And what they found was that almost 80% of them were subject to or were receiving fraudulent mails asking for transactions, asking for fraudulent transactions. What is alarming is that almost 1/3 of them, about 26% of them, reported losses of $5,000 or more. So it means that even today, even after all this awareness and visibility, you still have 1/3 of the brokers who are losing data or losing money because of such kind of mails. So why is it that these attacks are happening? So primarily it goes with brokers, and the brokerage firms are embracing modern technologies to provide better services to their customers. So of course the customers have started demanding better user experience, better services, going from what they are also getting from the other financial banks or the other innovative financial companies. So brokers also are pressured, and they are adopting modern technologies to be able to provide that kind of experience to their customers. It could be in terms of anytime, anywhere trading. It could be in terms of multiple channels for the customers to do the trading and the transactions. So it could be over the web-based trading, the mobile trading, it could be over the call center, or even looking at the dealer terminals. So these new technologies have also introduced new risks, particularly mobility, where suddenly your data becomes spread across a large number of devices, which is outside of your corporate perimeter, and hence it becomes easily susceptible to more and more attacks. So with these rapidly evolving technologies and the modern technologies that are getting integrated within your corporate environment, the attack surface is increasing, and attackers are getting more and more avenues to be able to penetrate into the systems that you have implemented. It would also be interesting to see who are the actors, who are the guys who are attacking our systems. And it's interesting to look at how they have evolved over a period of time. So all this started around 2000 with the highly publicized the distributed denial of service attacks, the DDoS attacks on high-profile targets such as the CNN, Yahoo, Amazon, eBay, etc. But these were by the low rangers or the script kiddies who were not really doing it with a very strong intent or something. They just wanted to have some fun, and they were wanting to look at creating nuisance. And after the DDoS, it sort of they went ahead with the worms coming into picture, where you infect a computer and then you try to see how many other computers are also getting infected using that same infection. So that is where you would have heard about the Code Red, the Nimda, etc. And so many worms started developing. Soon they realized, but all this was still done for fun or for creating some amount of nuisance. And soon they realized that they could also make money out of this. So if they could execute DDoS attacks on the gaming or the gambling sites, they could ask for ransom and make some motive. So what started off as fun soon moved to profits. The intent now was to see how can I infect a machine using a worm, spread that infection to more and more machines, get control of that, spread that, use that as a base to spread that to further machines, and just you create from worms. The aim became to create botnets, so that you have control of more and more number of machines, and then use these infected machines, control those machines to conduct distributed the DDoS attacks, the distributed denial of service attacks, to get ransom. So they also now, once the motive of profit was seen, they also started looking at the larger enterprises. And so many crime syndicates came into picture. So once they started making profits, they realized that if they were more organized, if they were more coordinated, they could do a much better job of it, and they could execute attacks which would yield them much more results, much more profits in terms of having greater access and greater money out of the entire attacks. So some of the crime syndicates, Russian Business Network is one of the prominent one amongst them, and they realized that they could attack the larger financial enterprises with ransom as the payoff. So some of the crime syndicates, some of the other crime syndicates apart from RBN included the Carter Planet, the Dark Matter, the Shadow Crew, and IAC. So these are some of those. And they started looking at attacks on the large card processor systems to get the cardholder data and try to get money out of it. So over the years, these are some of the data in terms of the card data compromise that has happened. This was around the period from 2007 to 2010. So huge attacks with a big impact on ChoicePoint, card system, TGX, Heartland payment systems. So if you see on the slides here, we also talk about the amount of damages in some cases. For example, $30 million in ChoicePoint, $118 million and above in TGX to cover for all the losses as well as the financial penalties and litigation. As they were moving ahead, so the financial institutions also were developing their defenses, and the crime syndicates now moved to developing the financial malware and looking at other kind of social engineering techniques to compromise the systems, because end users was an easier target than looking at the perimeters which the financial institutions were trying to defend much more in a much more robust manner. So we had some of the financial malware like the Zeus, and in the India Bank it was Chrome Inject. These were some of the financial malware. So the aim was to capture credentials or to be able to modify transactions by targeting the end users who were a relatively easier target than looking at the financial institutions at the perimeter who had strengthened their controls over there. It also moved on to looking at phishing attacks as well as the other forms of social engineering. So all these were targeted at the end users, and they still continue to be a very dominant form of way to compromise the systems in the financial institutions. So with the crime syndicates coming into place, you saw a surge in the attacks with often disastrous consequences. And this is just a list of some of the attacks that happened over the last 3-year period from 2010 to 2013. And these attacks just continue to happen. Very recently, we had heard about the Anthem breach. Anthem is a health insurance provider in the US, and 80 million customer record, the confidential records about 80 million customers was lost. So that's about 1/3 of the entire US population, the data getting compromised over there. And so you can imagine the amount of identity theft attacks and the spams that can happen just because of the compromise on the Anthem. A very recent one, as we say, and I think it was about a few weeks back or maybe last month, was on VTech, which is an online educational toy store. And data of several, I think about 1 million kids was also lost. So it's the children data that is also getting lost along with the parents. So that can create a lot of issues in terms of identity thefts and identity frauds in the future. So with that, you had a lot of parallel underground economy that was developing, where there was a strong demand for the data in view for the money. So depending on what was the level of details that one had, one could go from $2 to about $1,000 in terms of what they could get in the underground economy. And what also happened during this time was that the singular crime syndicate firms, or the single gangs, started to get targeted by the law enforcement agencies such as the FBI, etc. And some of them got closed. So these guys went a step ahead, and they looked at forming a network. And very soon, the criminal syndicates evolved into crime as a service, which was about having a network of gangs which are underground, who are working in a very close, coordinated manner, almost as a business, with an organization structure, with an easy division of labor, and available to everyone in a very accessible way and at a very affordable price. So you had when we talked about the crime there as a service, so you had a very defined organizational structure and division of labor where you had the coders or the programmers who were writing the code for the exploits. You had the hackers who would search and exploit the applications. You had the mule accounts where the fund transfer would happen. You had the distributors who would be looking at finding a market for the stolen data. So there was the entire organizational structure that was developed, that started getting developed. And so you had the crime there as a service. What this essentially did was it made the malware, it made the attack toolkits, etc. very easily available and accessible at an affordable price to anyone who would want to conduct a cybercrime. Interestingly, around 2011-2012, there was the RSA breach, and attackers here used multiple techniques, right from spear phishing, which was a kind of looking at social engineering, as well as exploiting zero-day vulnerability to get access to the RSA systems and taking out the code. So the attack on RSA possibly was not directed at RSA itself. It was got to do more to see how they could get access to the defense contractor, the Lockheed Martin, and try to get secret and confidential data from there. And this was the sort of the beginning of cyber warfare, where it was a cyber warfare sponsored by one nation against another. And so we had the evolution of some of the new actors, which was the nation states, looking at cyber warfare. And then we also had another category of activists who were trying to see that if they were not happy with your ideology, if they were not happy with the policies that you are following, they wanted to sort of bring that out and sort of create an entire issue about it. So nation states and activists are also the new actors that have come in the field. And cyber espionage, China continues to be one of the nations that is looking at cyber warfare against US. So we had attacks against Iran. So there are a lot of cyber espionage continues to be quite a dominant thing in the recent times. So in summary, we have very well organized actors who have access to the tools and the techniques at affordable rates from the various crime commerce as well as the crime as a service. So the last but not the least would be the actors on the insiders. So insiders could become a kind of a threat to the organization because of multiple factors. It could even be a simple thing like negligence because they lose a mobile or a laptop. It could be because of lack of awareness. They were not aware that sending out this kind of information or giving this kind of information to someone was something which could be detrimental to the organization, or it could be malicious. The insiders are of course not so sophisticated or organized as the crime syndicates. But having said that, even one or two insider attacks could potentially have a very huge impact. So that sort of gives an overview of why is it that cyber security is important for the brokers. What are the kind of, why is it that these attacks are happening because of the adoption of modern technologies, and who are the actors who are behind the data and the information and the intent to attack the brokerage community. As the cyber threats has been developing, the regulatory bodies have also been keeping up pace, and they have also been looking at releasing guidelines as to how to protect the entire trading systems and the trading platforms. So if you look at the US, so we have FINRA, which is the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority, as well as the Securities Exchange Commission. They have come up with detailed guidelines on what the brokerage companies as well as the investment advisor companies need to do with respect to their cyber security. They have also started conducting the audits or the examinations, which all the broker firms will be subject to. Closer home at India, the financial sector has of course always been a very regulated industry, and already we had very strong regulations from Reserve Bank of India for the banking sector. In July 2015, SEBI came up with the cyber security and the cyber resiliency framework for the MMIs, which is the market infrastructure institutions, primarily comprising of the stock exchanges, the clearing corporation, and the depositories. So most of these regulations and have sort of adopted from the industry practices also, and they specify in detail a lot of things that need to be done and our organizations must do to improve their cyber security posture and prevent themselves from the attacks. So while organizations can look at doing a lot of these things, it's very easy to lose a sense of direction and get sort of muddled in what we are trying to do. So I thought that we will focus on some of the things, the top 10 things that brokerage firms can do to quickly bring up their security to a reasonable level of preparedness against cyber attacks. So in the next next 10 to 15 minutes, I will just quickly sort of go through what are the things that we can do quickly to ensure that we have attained a reasonable level of security. I'm not saying that this is a security that is the most foolproof. These are also not those things which may be applicable to all of you. So it all depends at what level of maturity in terms of security an individual organization is. But these can be looked as a kind of a best practice kind of a thing, 10 things that could be achieved. So the first one is we need to protect our endpoint devices because they often become the easiest point of entry for attackers into our network, into our environment. Very interesting case over here was an organization called as CodeSpaces, which was providing development platforms for the developers using a hosting service, and they were hosted on the AWS. There was a compromise on the AWS, the Amazon console of the CodeSpaces, and it is suspected that that compromise was because of a weakness on the endpoint of the administrator of the AWS console. Because of that weakness, the attacker was able to access the console, and he sort of deleted all the Amazon instances that CodeSpaces had over there, and they also deleted the backup. So it shows that how a weakness on the endpoint would lead to disastrous consequences, and CodeSpaces had to basically shut down. So the entire business was brought down by one in the weakness when it came to the endpoint. So there are the key risks that one needs to protect against would be the infections from the virus. How do you protect that end users are not sort of bringing in the malware or are able to extract sensitive data using the mobile devices such as the USBs or the DVDs, etc. How do you ensure that you protect them from visiting malicious sites? And also look at how do we address the case of backup. So one of the other cases we discussed about the cryptoware. There was another firm in India which was also attacked by the same thing, and unfortunately they did not have a backup. So unless they sort of look at the ransom and pay off, the senior management at one of the firms is not able to get his data back. So backup, etc. So this is where the endpoint protection becomes important aspect. The other one is protect our access to or from the network. So this is again one of the very base, I would say, the cyber hygiene controls. How do you protect your network from, how do you ensure that you have a division where your sensitive data and non-sensitive data is not in the same zone? How do you block unauthorized Wi-Fi access? How do you monitor and block any suspicious network traffic? So you need to ensure that you have not only good products at the network, such as the firewalls, the IPS, the content filtering, etc., but they need to be managed on a continuous basis. They need to be continuously administered so that they are yielding the desired results. As we said, mobile devices are quickly emerging as one of the primary focal points for the cyber criminals and maybe one of the key attack vectors. So in case you have allowed access to the customers or your employees on the mobile devices, it's important and critical that we have adequate controls over there to ensure that the corporate data and the personal data is segregated, to ensure that your corporate email and the personal emails are segregated, to ensure that the mobile apps that are being used by the customers are safe and they do not lead to leakage of the data which is there on the mobile devices. You need to ensure that in case the mobile devices get lost, you are able to control and protect the confidential data that is there on those mobile devices through authentication, through encryption. There could be many ways of doing that. So, ensuring you have a good mobile device security solution implemented is something that is essential and becomes increasingly important as smartphones and as more and more mobile devices are becoming more critical and your users start running more of that. There is a need to protect the internet presence, and if you look at various incidents in the last 2 years, websites and web applications have been a primary source for many attacks. So it was the weaknesses in the websites, insecure websites or the insecure web applications, which finally led to access to the backend systems, the backend databases, and finally leading to a lot of compromise on the data. It could also, weaknesses in the web applications could also lead to unauthorized transactions. So the key risks with respect to the weaknesses in the websites and applications, which could lead to defacement, which could lead to access to the backend systems, etc., that those are things that need to be protected. So you need to ensure that your websites, you are doing a continuous security assessment of the websites and the web applications. You ensure that you are continuously monitoring whether you have any kind of a malware on that or not, or is there a defacement. Because it not only leads to loss of data, it will also lead to loss of reputation and loss of credibility amongst your customer base. So Citibank, Sony, Nasdaq, etc. are some of the examples where it was the weaknesses in the web applications that finally led to the attacks that they had there. The fifth control, we need to ensure that you implement multi-factor or at least a two-factor authentication for all the critical transactions or access to all your critical systems and data. Preferably, if your second factor of authentication is through a different channel, so let's say if your login and password is going through the internet and if your second factor comes through a mobile, that makes the authentication still stronger. And this could lead to a lot of protection against so many of the unauthorized transactions that we see which are being made over the emails or over any other kind of remote means. It could lead to protection from unauthorized access to the critical systems. So we talked about the code spaces where the AWS console was compromised by the attacker because of a weakness in the endpoint. If there was a two-factor authentication enabled on that system, possibly even that could have been avoided. So it all works down to a matter of looking at defense in depth. So it's not that there's one single control which is going to protect you. So it's the way the different controls work together. So you have protection at the endpoint layer, you have protection at the network layer, you look at protection at the application layer, and you also look at the protection at the data layer. So there's multiple controls that work in unison. We also need to ensure that access to the various systems or the data is given on the principle of least privilege as well as on a need-to-know basis. So you give only those access to your employees what they need for their particular job function. And I think this is a lesson which is very well learned from the WikiLeaks and the Snowden experience. So essentially, Snowden was nothing but he was outsourced contractor, and he was given access to a lot of servers which had critical data. The important point is that that access and that privileged access was never monitored. even though it was a third-party access. And it was because of that that he was able to transfer a lot of files to the USB messenger, and then we know the tremendous impact that they had. So the access itself goes through a kind of a life cycle. So when an employee joins you, when an employee moves to a different role, it could be from one department to another, or when he moves to a higher role, or it could be also, it becomes very important when an employee leaves an organization. So you need to terminate the access. So implementing the access controls to ensure that only the right people have at the right level of access to the, especially the sensitive data in the systems. Data loss prevention could actually be looked at almost the last frontier when it comes to the security. So even if all your other controls have failed or have not worked in unison, which could be the endpoint network, and still the attacker is able to come to the data, encryption could help in some scenarios where the attacker is not able to look at what is it that was there. So we had we still have scenarios where organizations face a lot of damage and a lot of data loss simply because of encryption not being enforced on the laptops or on the mobile devices. So Stern AG, this is a incident in 2015 itself. So an employee lost an encrypted laptop with sensitive information of 350,000 clients, and it was subjected to a penalty of $225,000. There was a similar, different kind of incident that had happened in 2010 with D.A. Davidson. So essentially over here, a database with sensitive client information was exposed to the internet without having adequate access controls or without having adequate encryption. And that led to hacking and loss of data. And again, it was subjected to penalty. So encryption as well as data loss prevention tools, these are very critical to ensure that your sensitive customer data as well as the financial data remains secure. Continuous monitoring to detect threats. So while it is important to have preventive measures such as the endpoint security, your antivirus, your anti-malware, your USB controls, your firewalls, it's also important to sort of recognize that no security is 100% foolproof, and you are likely to be subjected to attacks and you are likely to be compromised. And in such cases, it becomes important to ensure that you are able to detect the threats or the suspicious activities in the least possible time and be able to respond effectively to that. And hence it's very important that you have a continuous monitoring to look at what are the threats developing internally or externally in the environment, and then be prepared to respond in the fastest time. Lack of visibility on what is developing as a threat itself makes it very difficult to be able to respond. So having a continuous monitoring to ensure what are the suspicious activities that are happening in the environment, so that becomes critical. Threats always look at some weakness in your environment to be able to make an impact or a damage. And so it is important that while we have continuous monitoring of the threats, we also need to look at continuous assessment for the weaknesses in the environment. We need to have a visibility of what are the weaknesses, be it on our infrastructure, be it on the applications, or be it on the mobile apps. And then look at a prioritized way of which are the ones that need to be immediately addressed, which are the high risk vulnerabilities, and then look at tracking that whether it has been closed in the appropriate manner or not. In fact, even today, many of the weaknesses, many of the compromises have happened on weaknesses for which solutions were still already available. So this becomes a critical area. And finally, we need to look at user security awareness, because as we have seen, a lot of compromises happens because of the fraudulent emails, and where the users are not aware, the employees are not aware of how to deal with such kind of emails or whether it represents a kind of a threat. So having a continuous training program and helping them understand and protect against some of the very common threats that they are subjected to becomes very important. So having looked at some of the top 10 things to do to come up to a very reasonable level of security, the point is how do we do it and what are the challenges? So essentially there are two options that one has. You can set up the entire thing on your own, like many of the large enterprises do. So you look at the various technologies, which could be the endpoint technologies, such as the antivirus, the anti-malwares, which could be the network technologies, such as your firewalls, your IPS, etc., which could be your data loss prevention tools, the backup mechanisms, encryption tools. So you need to look at, you buy all those tools, you implement them, you have a way of managing and maintaining those systems in an effective manner. So that's one option where you set up everything on your own. Or you could be smart and nimble like many other organizations today and look at the SaaS model, where you don't need to invest in software or hardware or skills. You get everything as a service and you get everything as security outcomes that you need to protect against your risks. And that is where Palladium can help you. So Palladium on Demand is our cybersecurity as a service, which is designed for customers who want instant and robust security outcomes without having to invest in software, hardware, or skills. So the way you benefit is you get enterprise-grade security in a very simple and affordable manner, and also flexible manner because we offer a lot of choices and options to you. We empower all organizations to embrace modern technologies without being hindered by cybersecurity risks. We had covered a lot of top 10, lot of key and prioritized activities that you need to do, and we offer a lot of outcomes to meet all your security requirements, right from the endpoint to the network to the data protection, covering to the identity and access management, etc. What we will do is we will quickly run you through a demo, and we'll try to show you how using Palladium on Demand it becomes very easy for you to achieve some of those security outcomes in a simple and affordable manner. And so I will request my colleague Santosh to come over and just quickly take you through the demo.
Wait.
Okay. Check. Good evening, everyone. So, like Rohit mentioned, it's very critical. You get protected from all the critical viruses, the attacks at the network level, at the endpoint level, at your mobiles, and basically it requires either to set it up on your own or you go with the SaaS model. So I'm going to show you in the on-demand product how effectively we will be able to protect it from the on-demand, how you can quickly enroll, how you can get the protection done in an instant manner. So basically when we enroll to the solution, you will be able to see the kind of protections you are having it. Like here mentioned, we have quickly shown an office or a broker office where they have 2-3 locations, and they can get subscription for the network, endpoint, and scanning and monitoring set of services. So we are basically we have a enrollment process. You just fill in the form to provide the details. For example, I will quickly show you how you can enroll for the endpoint solution. There is an Excel sheet. You just need to fill up how many employees you have. It will include your contract employees as well, and then you can just upload the Excel sheet, and then you need to put up this IP addresses range where you wanted to cache the endpoint part. So once we have that, we will send the link to all your employees and the contract folks where they can go to the download link and they'll be able to just select their operating system. Most of them will be in Windows and they can select whether they wanted a 32-bit or 64-bit. They just download it, and the moment they install the agent, that agent will communicate to our server. So there we can set all the different configurations. For example, you wanted to block his USB drive. You wanted to block his USB drives. You'll be able to block all the USB drives, so that he will not get infected through the USB drives. Or if you wanted to have a policy like you wanted to allow the USB drives only those are encrypted. So that is also possible. You can allow only the access if the drive is encrypted. And you can also, most of the time you only need a read access. So you can enable it, USB drives as only read-only access. So you can select the users, you can form the groups. Basically, you may have different departments. For example, you may have a R&D or you may have a guys who would be managing your websites. They might need a write access. But when it comes to the other department, like your brokerage firms who deals with the customer desk, those kind of stuffs, they don't need a USB access. So in those cases, you can make it as two different groups, and then you can apply the policies to them. So if in case somebody try to come across and then still try to add, or even if there is their virus is detected in their endpoints, so you will the customer admin or the person who is enrolling the solution or have access to view the stuffs will get an alert saying that what all the systems got compromised, and he can also see the list of patches pending. So one of the reason system is kind of get infected is you may be using mainly the browsers very older versions. So we can have those patches applied remotely. The only action the the folks will do is just install an agent. After that, everything can be taken remotely. You don't need to visit individually to apply individual patches and then track it through, follow it up. That's not at all required. So everything can be done through if you're at a customer site, you can just raise a ticket. Our on-demand team will take care of pushing the patches remotely to the end-user machines. So this is pretty much on the endpoint perspective. So moving on to how you can secure the network part. So I'll just quickly show you. This customer has a two offices in Mumbai. If you can go to this is just four set of information you need to give, like mainly this ISP thing, how your internet is, how your office is having internet connectivity. You may be having it from few vendors, like you may be having a DHCP, or just need to have two steps, fill in this information. For example, for a static, you need to fill in your IP addresses. You just fill it up, and then you need to see whether you wanted to have a Wi-Fi enabled in your office, and you need to configure those SSIDs and the passwords. So once you do that, Palladyne ships the appliance where you will be able to connect it. It's like a patent pending solution. It's like your how you set up your TV or something. Just connect the power core and the USB connection, and then it communicates to our server, where again in the configuration section you will be able to see what is the access you wanted to give it to a specific person. For example, here it shows again I have 2-3 departments here. Basically they can see who can access which URL. For example, you wanted to block Facebook or social activities network. You can pretty much do it like you can add a blacklist here. For example, we have allowed only the LinkedIn. We have blocked the social networking category, and we allowed only LinkedIn. None of the Facebook or Twitter's employees can access. This is mainly all for we will be able to block all the sites which are spreading the viruses as well. So the moment again it is same as how network works. We set up the policy here. It pushes to your firewall appliance. So mainly it is pretty much applicable, the same procedure is applicable to all the services. For example, you wanted to monitor your assets. Again, you come in here and then add the asset details. We will push the, we will have the virtual appliance or the agent which will monitor your threads. For example, here you can see somebody is trying to, attempt many invalid login attempts. Say they're trying to guess the password maybe. So the moment if somebody is trying to do that kind of activity to your assets, admin gets an alert. So this alert can be through your SMS or it can be your email as well. And you frequently need a reports like what is my asset status and how it is doing and everything. So that is again we have it in the template section where you can design your own reports, and then we can view the reports of the current assets and so forth. So basically here you will be able to get a full control of, for example, I quickly show you the monitoring reports. So this is one of the assets information, and what are all the activities, what are all the deny requests came in, and what are all the traffic which got denied to a specific server. And say if in case you wanted to get in touch with our support team, you can lock a ticket. You might wanted a specific access to a specific person or a specific server. You can get in touch with us through a ticketing part. And like Rohit mentioned, it is becoming a difficult thing to make a control of all the different branches, different locations, and as such. Like as a higher level position person, you might wanted to have a full control of your all the locations and all the roaming guys. So here we have put up a similar dashboard thing where we will be plotting your offices in the maps, and then you will be able to monitor how many locations you have. You can see these green indicators. These are all the location of offices which are all the services which are running fine. And you can see the person icon here. These are all the roaming users, like they are not working from office, they may be working from home, or they may be traveling. So you can see those persons as well. So if you click on that, you will be able to see who is that person, who is from, and then we can also click here to still navigate why it's shown in red. He may be trying to access a USB drive which is blocked, so that he will be or his endpoint may be infected. And here we have put up all the consolidated dashboards. Like we also give the ratings, so that basically it gives the full control over your security services cutting across all the services. Like you have a network protection, you have an endpoint, you have a mobile, you have a scanning and monitoring being watched over. So this is a kind of SaaS model where you don't need to run behind multiple providers. For example, antivirus, you may be going to some vendor. Your firewalls, you may be going to a different person. For a mobile, you may not have some. Even if you have, you may be getting it from someone else. So this is the platform. It gives you the full control. We will be providing this over the SaaS model where you can pay it based on the number of users you have it in your office, and you can number of locations you spread it across. And the last part, basically, Rohit was explaining how your website is a door to attackers. So basically, you can quickly scan your website. Just 2 steps. You just need to enter in the URL here, and then schedule the scan. I'll quickly show you whether you can enter the URL or you can enter the network scan. So basically you can even schedule it now, or you can even schedule it to the later stages. Here you can schedule like when you wanted to run your scan to a specific website or a specific asset. So once the scan is executed, I'll quickly show you one of the scan results. You can see like this machine has a 3 major vulnerabilities, so which has to be fixed immediately. One is very critical, and we also give there are few things which may not be a vulnerability. Those we indicated as informations. Here you can see, those informations would be maybe require action, but the critical and the critical high we recommend it has to be addressed immediately. Which will, if it is not, then it will lead entry to the attackers, where they can get in and steal the data, and then they can even change the stuffs, and then they can even, for example, like one of the example Anthem attack, he was mentioning it out. They simply steal the data, and one of the code space thing, they deleted all the data, and within 2 hours they did all the operations. The impact is the business has to close. So protecting the critical asset is a major part. You can do this. You can detect all the critical vulnerabilities through the scan in an instant manner. You don't need to even install the agent or anything. You just give the URL. In 2 steps, you have the list of vulnerabilities, which we will be giving with a recommendation how to fix it as well. So that sums it up for the complete product. If in case you have any specific question, I can drill down to that specific portion of the product. So I'll hand it over back to the Rohit. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, thanks Santosh. So the objective of this demo was really to show how with SaaS providers you can get to achieve all those 10 things in a very easy and in a very fast manner. So I was just using Palladyne On Demand as one of the examples. There are several players who are in this space and who offer security as a service. You could have look at them, and you could see for yourself what are the services that you need, and be able to implement that and start achieving the security outcomes that you need in a very easy manner. So with that, I come to the end of my session. I hope I have been within time, and I am open for any questions. So if there are no questions, let me also use this opportunity to invite all. Yeah.
One question which I had is that globally you find there are many websites, dedicated websites, which kind of help the common man identify what sort of threats. They're more of an education kind of thing, and also they offer little apps or which you can download for which are really safe. Now the problem is when you have so many apps floating in the market, thousands of them, you really don't know which is really a trustworthy one and which is not. I think there is a site globally called Heimdall Security, which kind of helps you analyze what is safe and what is not, and educates the users of various types of, like you said, touch points. It could be in your office, it could be a mobile or anything. Do we have any such dedicated site for India where you can just go and see that, okay, this is safe and this is not? So the important thing is many of us don't even know where the threat could come from. So we go and download a lot of things onto our phone. They appear to be useful, but we don't know. We are actually disclosing a lot when you do that. When you click on that accept, you're actually accepting a lot of things. I don't think anybody goes through that list, what they are accepting, when you go and say that. So how risky are these things? Because we are moving more from a system which is driven by desktops to a system which is connected on the phone. So I guess there's a lot more threats which, are a result of mobile using rather than just the desktop. So, do we have any such organization or some which you can actually educate the people
Yeah.
to protect themselves?
Yeah, so there are two things to it. One is you will always have websites or you will have apps which will provide such information, etc. And it's important that you get to, before you deploy that, either for your users or you as a customer, how do you get access to, how do you get access to services which says that this is safe or this is not safe? So that is a continuously evolving thing also, because there are so many changes that happens to the applications or the websites on a continuous basis. So there are some sources where you have a blacklist or a whitelist of applications which are safe, which are unsafe, and that's something. Some of them are free, some of them are paid sites. Apart from that, as an enterprise, you can always avail of services which helps you assess the security of those applications or those websites on demand. So at any time you want to look at is that application secure, is that website secure, you can do a on-demand kind of a testing from experts, which would give you the higher reliability in terms of knowing whether that is safe to access or not. Yeah, so as I said, so the regulators are also sort of evolving with the way cyber threats are developing. So in India, of course, in India and globally, financial sector has been one of the most regulated sectors. Reserve Bank of India was the first and the foremost one which came with a lot of guidelines which the banks need to follow. And as I said, SEBI has come up with guidelines for the stock exchanges, the clearing corporation and depositories in July 2015. And we expect that this will evolve more as we move along. This is something which they have introduced. They have given a good list of best practices as well as comprehensive things that need to be done by these participants, by these market participants, to ensure a stable and a secure trading environment in the country. So, yeah, as we were talking, there could be some areas which still need evolution, and they will develop as we go along. But even the SEBI guidelines, to that extent, is a good reference point even for the brokers, and it provides a comprehensive list of things which can be done to achieve a secure trading environment for your customers and for your organization.
In fact, why this cybercrime topic also we touched upon is because recently one of our members raised a concern to the forum that his website and his details, to explain you in such a way that you get messages. A normal investor gets a message that you buy or you sell this stock because it's going to fluctuate and this is the amount you're going to make out of it. And they're using the name of that organization in order to propaganda their message. So this is a serious concern. He's saying that I was so zapped that not only my company name and logo is on his website, that he's his client and he's promoting on his behalf. So this is like a serious issue which he raised to that city or that town police station also. So complaint has been launched. He raised that issue with us. We have requested to send whatever papers and documents. We are planning to collectively take that issue and show it to even SEBI and talk about it. So these are small things which are propping up in a serious notion. So one was this, what cybercrime exactly is, how to safeguard your back office in terms of your back office works and everything. So that is why one of the seminar is this, and the other is how to identify these threats and how to collectively stop it if possible. Because police stations are saying that it is not into their purview. You go to the regulator. Regulator is identifying still that how these things are happening. You get more documentation. So these are things which, if you also have anything, you're most welcome to raise it to the forum. And if we can collectively look into that, it would be very helpful. So, if anybody would like to ask or highlight anything, most welcome. Fine, so let us conclude the seminar over here. Thank you once again, Rohit, for your time and patience. Thank you once again, audience, for being over here and our people on the webinar. On that note, may I request Mr. Sunil Sharda, the person's name who I request, who informed that he's the gentleman who has, give us an opportunity that why don't you do this program on cybercrime? This is just one program we have done. I'm sure the way things are coming up, the way things are propping up in this arena, a lot of things can be looked into it. In fact, Paladion's article is also coming in our forthcoming magazine, so please have a look. If you have any points or views, you can always share on the forum platform. That is what forum is made of, you members. So on that note, I would request Mr. Sunil Sharda to please kindly come over here and hand over a small memento to Rohit. Mr. Sunil Sharda is the Director of Systematic Shares, and he's also the Forum Governing Board member. So thank you once again, Sunil ji, for coming over here. Sunil ji, if you like it.
Dear friends, in fact, I met the colleague of Mr. Rohit actually while I was coming from Delhi. And we were sitting in the aircraft, and I was just talking to someone, and he understood that I am a capital market person. So he said, "Sir, you are a capital market person, and are you aware that what kind of cyber crime and other things can cause?" So I asked him that I am the one person actually who has suffered it maximum, because if we recollect a historic case of the digital certificate issued, that case happened almost 6 months back. Digital certificate of mine was issued in Delhi by someone. What he did, he basically, from my landline number of, MTNL, he got the detail of my residence. He printed a bill of MTNL, and then he, from the ROC website, which is now, we say we become so transparent in the Modi era, where you say everything is available. So you pay 50 rupees from my company. He took my, PAN number. He uses his photo, but my PAN number, giving my, mobile, my landline, bill, and then procured a details, fraudulently, he obtained the certificate. And what he did, we understand, and what he did and what it cost. We had an investment from a venture capital firm of a huge investment into a company, where he removed all of us by using that digital signature and inducted his directors. So we had to approach and use the best of the lawyer in the country actually to work overnight. Janak Dwarkadas we hired. And in a single day we got a judgment from, the Honorable Justice G.S. Patel. In a single day he said these directors need to be reinstated. Otherwise what would happen to Tata, what would happen to Reliance if anybody, can get a digital certificate and, reinstate himself, because it's a company, everything is getting digitalized. And he was rather concerned to note that if the judgments are becoming digital, what would happen to Supreme Court judgments, and this if everything is going wrong actual direction. So in that connection, I thought we must hold this seminar. I am thankful to Mr. Rohit and the team that they are here. And in fact, the content became, I would say, little more advanced or technical for a finance guy for us to understand. But let me just tell you that the digital fraud or crime, this thing is becoming a very serious issue. And in our case, we had not only fought it, in the civil side. We got a judgment there, as well as we made sure that cybercrime case get registered. We had to meet the police commissioner. We met, and that matter became a suo motu PIL in the Bombay High Court. And all the three, one chartered accountant, one company secretary, all got arrested in that matter actually. So we made sure not only that we became director, we have to ensure that we have to, put these people, to the task actually. So this look a little complicated, I think I would say in that manner, but the fact remains the cyber subject is becoming a very, very important from a protection perspective. And whatever we do, people, those who are, criminals, they are perhaps working more advanced actually in terms of, doing all wrong things. So I am thankful still, that you are here. Thank you, thank you.
So thank you very much once again, ladies and gentlemen, for being over here, and Sunil ji giving a complete outlook that why this type of seminars are required, giving a first-hand example to what happened. So thank you once again for being over here, and wishing you all a very happy new year ahead 2016. Thank you very much.